Hi everyone, my name is Sima. Welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be ranking the characters of the show Loki by how badly I want them to throw me through a wall. This is a series I've done twice before on my channel, I believe, and people seem to really like it. They get views, they get comments, they get incredulous reactions from all of my friends, so I figured I would keep it going. I just finished the Loki show and I immediately wanted to do a ranking. Usually with this series, if there are enough characters for me to just do a straight ranking of all of them without it being 100 hours long, I will do every single character. If there are just too many characters for that to be feasible, I will pick and choose. This time around, the way I decided to do it is I picked every major character and then I went through the list of like minor characters or like extras or like one scene characters and sort of picked the ones that I thought had like notable enough details about them where I could actually like accurately look at them and make some sort of assumption about them. So there's like, for example, there's like 10 or 15 different like Minutemen in the show. I only picked one that stood out to me for some reason and I put him on the list. And I figured in terms of just like pure physical strength and abilities, that kind of probably goes across the board equal for all Minutemen anyway. So you can kind of, based on what I say for that person, come to your own assumptions about the rest of them. But every single like named character that like serves a purpose on the show, they should be on the list. And then also I have every single Loki variant just because I thought that would be fun. As usual, I have themed my makeup and also this time my outfit around the premise of this video. As you can see, I'm wearing a very green, very gold, very Loki color scheme inspired makeup look, even though he really does not lean into that color scheme in this show, which was a detail that kind of frustrated me. But we're not gonna talk about this that frustrated me because I haven't decided yet, but I might actually do a video talking through like what I liked and what I didn't like about the show, but I haven't decided yet. It depends on how I feel. Mostly because I don't know if I'm gonna be able to organize my thoughts, and also I feel like I have some controversial opinions. I feel like a lot of people like across the board like loved the show and didn't have any complaints, and I like liked some things that they did and there was a couple things I just like had issues with. So I don't know, maybe I'll make that video, maybe I won't, I don't know. But that's the theme of my eye look. And my dress is a dress I got from Hot Topic a couple years ago. It's an Infinity Stone themed dress. It is, I think it's the Time Stone dress, because that's why it's green. It says time on like the sleeve, but it actually has like these black ribbons going down the side that have the names of every single Infinity Stone. So it says like space, reality, time, mind, soul, etc. And then it says like infinity on these things. I just thought that the fact that Loki is so, it's not the Tesseract obviously, but Loki is so intimately like connected to the Infinity Stones, and also the green and black kind of went with the whole theme. So I figured there was no better opportunity than to put it on now. And final thing, I usually do a string of disclaimers in these videos. I am just going to skip through them. If you want to see the whole spiel, I will put the playlist with all the other videos up and you can just like watch the disclaimers there. But the main one is I don't endorse throwing people through walls, especially non-consensually. Don't do this in real life. Obviously we are talking in hyperbole, this is the internet, none of this is serious, and without further ado, I'm going to jump right in because I have a couple characters I want to go through and not a lot of time, so let's just go for it. So I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, but all in all I've narrowed it down to 30 characters, so we'll just make our way through starting from number 30, who is Martin. Martin is the variant that is getting brought into the TVA right before Loki gets processed, and we don't see him for a long period of time, but in the very small short amount of time that we're with him, we learn that his dad is like a Goldman Sachs banker type dude, and he just seems very spoiled, very irritating, very like stubborn. He's asked to take a ticket, he will not take a ticket. He seems the kind of guy you'd like really hate to be stuck in a doctor's office, or like if you're trying to renew your driver's license, like he's the kind of guy that like would be ahead of you in line and you would like want them dead so badly. So for that reason, he's number 30th. He also just doesn't look like the type of person that has like the mental fortitude or the physical strength to be able to throw me like through anything, let alone a wall. And I just like don't like him. Don't think that would be a fun experience for either of us. I would prefer if someone like Hulk smashed him through a wall, but you know, that's not exactly what the video is about. So like, yeah, no, I don't like him. He seems like a kind of person that if I knew him in real life, I would steer clear 100%. Number 29, I checked the Loki wiki and his name, he was just listed as analyst number 2. He's the guy at the end of that episode when Sylvie sets off all the reset charges. He's like calling in the situation, but he's like speaking in complete jargon and nobody understands him until another analyst like takes the phone and is like, there's bombs exploding all over the timeline. He just like seems like a dweeb. I put him at 29 because he was memorable enough for me to remember him, but he was memorable in the sense that I was like, oh, you're a dweeb. You are not helpful in this situation, and you don't seem to have any physical strength either, so I don't think you'd be able to throw me very far. So he's number 29. Following him, number 28, is the so similarly and aptly named analyst number 1. He seems slightly more competent than his friend over there, and he has a cool mustache, and that just gets him like one place higher. I still don't think he would be able to throw me very far, but you know, he's a cool mustache, so that lands him the 20th spot. Number 27 is Casey. Casey was very memorable because he doesn't know what a fish is. I don't know if he just never knew what a fish was, or if going through the timeline wipe situation like made him forget what fish were, but I just don't understand why he would not learn what fish were over the course of like his work. Does he not read the TVA files? Like, even if he's not in the field, like, would you not at some point encounter a fish? Like, if MOBIUS can find a magazine that has a jet ski in it, you're telling me there was nothing for Casey to look at that had a fish in it? So he doesn't seem like, I don't know, he just doesn't seem very like traveled, very scholarly. None of that has anything to do with his like physical performance in the sense of the, like, he would be able to throw me through a wall or not through a wall, but he also just doesn't look particularly buff or fit, and as far as we know, he's just like a regular dude, so he's not like secretly all like super strong, right? Like he's not superpowers as far as we know. So I just don't see a scenario where we would ever get along to the capacity where I would want him to throw me through anything, and I also just don't think he'd be able to do it. But I like Casey. I think he's a funny guy. I like that he's not afraid of Loki. I like that he has a bunch of infinity stones in his drawer, like they're paperweights. He just seems like somehow like the most powerful and the least powerful guy in the room at the same time, which is kind of funny to me. Number 26 is the paperwork clerk. Again, he just sits behind a desk. He has a lot of he knows everything you've ever said in your life, which is kind of like ominous. I feel like I would want to get close to him and probably would extend an offer of like, can you throw me through a wall? Solely so that we would like bond in that capacity, and then I could be like, hey, now that we're friends, can you like slide me the stack of files about my life so I can like read everything I'm gonna say and maybe try to piece together what's gonna happen so that I can kind of like navigate life better and maybe avoid going through that path, even though it's like antithetical to like everything the TVA is about. But I think if we were friends, I could maybe get him to like bend the rules for me a little bit, and so that's why he's where he is. And he also has a really cute cat, and pets and cute animals will get you bonus points in this ranking because it's my ranking, and even if theoretically having a cat does not make you any stronger or weaker in terms of being able to throw me through anything, it matters to me, and so cats will bump you up. Also, I forgot to mention this, I usually have that Loki art like higher up on my wall, so it doesn't usually show up in my videos, but I thought this would be a good opportunity to lower it down so you guys could see it in the frame because that's the theme of the video. That is Loki, my beloved. Anyway, carrying on. Number 25 is the scanner clerk. So the reason the scanner clerk is higher, even though I think the paperwork clerk is more interesting, is just because he has like the machine with like the are you a robot thing, which leads me to like assume that he has wrangled with robots before. Like, I know the machine is what does the disintegrating presumably, but I think he can wrangle robots. I think he can wrangle like stubborn Lokis, etc, etc. And yeah, he's just a cool machine, and also probably cool stories. Like, I would like to ask him what it is like to encounter beings of all forms, robotic and otherwise, and why the robots get disintegrated. Like, that is a question I would really like an answer to. I know some people were speculating it was because they'd be able to tell that the timekeepers were not real, but that's all like assumptions and theories, and I would like the answer. So because he has a cool zapper machine, I think he's probably strong, and I think that would lend him the ability to throw me through a wall. I know it's kind of reach, and I know he, like, in stature, he is perhaps smaller than like a lot of other people on this list, but I don't think, as a fellow person of smaller stature, I just don't think it's fair to assume that people who are not like 6'5" are not strong enough to like hurl things, you know? So I think that little dude can pack a punch, and that's why he's where he is. Number 24 is that lady who's like in the archives where Loki goes and is like, hey, can you like give me all these papers? And she's like not helpful at all. And I like didn't particularly like her because she reminded me of like every unhelpful like adult that I've ever encountered in my life. But she like is a librarian, and I also think librarians are like, even if they're simultaneous, like some librarians are like angels and some of them are devils, but all of them hold the power of like God in their hands. Like, God in anime is on their side. And so I think solely because she is the keeper of all of these resources and all of this knowledge, she somehow in her seemingly frail body would be able to throw me like across the length of a football field. I don't know how. I just know like she strikes the fear of God in me, like all librarians do. And I think that fear of God comes from somewhere, and that is the secret like Hulk strength that she holds within her, and I think because of that she could hurl me through a wall. She's not helpful though, like that's the thing, she's deliberately not helpful, so take with that what you will. Number 23 is Miss Minutes. Miss Minutes, the thing with Miss Minutes is like I don't actually know if she could throw me, like I don't know if she physically is capable of doing that, because I can't tell if she can like become solid. Like, she's just like a hologram, right? Presumably. but she also scares the shit out of me. Like, she jump scared me in the last episode, so I don't know. I think she would find a way to become solid, and then she would like forcibly throw me through a wall. And so like, yeah, I think she could do it, and I think she's deeply evil and deeply possessed by like the spirit of like serial killers and all of the terrible people that have ever lived in humanity. Like, all of their souls come together to form Miss Minutes, I think. And so, do I think she could do it? Yes. Do I think she scares the shit out of me? Yes. The only reason she's not higher up is because I think right now, technologically, she's not quite there yet. But I think she's working on it. And if in Loki, like season 2, she becomes solid, she's like jumping into like top 5, I think. Because I don't know how you make a clock menacing, but it's literally like, you know, the same way like the Duolingo like owl is like mildly threatening, but you don't know why, because you're just like, oh, it's an owl that like is progressively reminding you more and more to like do your lessons. And you're like, bud, can you leave me alone? And it just gets like slowly more insistent in a way that's like very threatening. That's Miss Minutes. Like, she's all like, howdy y'all, but you know she's plotting something, and I don't trust her and I don't like her. So yeah, deeply evil, still not physical though, so she's staying where she is. Number 22 is Mobius M. Mobius, our good friend Owen Wilson. So the thing with Mobius is like, I feel like he would want to hurl me through a wall. Like, I feel like he would have the gusto and the right like attitude and the enthusiasm to do it. But as we saw in the last episode, he is not perhaps in like as tip-top shape as he used to be. And I just think, I don't know if he would not throw out his back, you know? So I would be concerned. I think he would be a great participant. Like, I think he could be a great spectator or like a cheerleader on the sidelines, like encouraging whoever is throwing me to throw me like really far. Like, I think he'd be great in that capacity. But I think in terms of like actually throwing me, I would worry about the long-term effects on his health. And I just don't think he'd be strong enough to do it in a particularly satisfying way. So I don't think it's worth bothering. But I think if he tried, it would be fun. And I think he'd be totally up for it. Like, I think he'd totally be down. Like, he'd have the right attitude. Maybe if he did some sort of like jet ski component where he like jet skied me, and then like, actually don't know how that would work, but maybe if we made it some sort of water sport-esque encounter, then it'd work out better. But yeah, it's an idea in progress. So that's why he can't be any higher, as much as he's a delight. Also, my hair, I keep touching it because I decided to just leave it loose because I was like, what kind of hair should I do for this video? And I was like, you know, Loki's all like wild and free, and Sylvie especially is like, her whole thing is chaos and unhingedness. And I was like, you know what's the most unhinged I can be? Like, just letting my hair loose. Like, not even, like, usually I have my hair down a lot, but I usually will pin it like out of my face and out of my forehead a little bit, or like I'll tie a bit of it back, or I'll like, yeah, I'll pin it in place. This is just like, it's a mop. It's a mop that keeps getting in my eyes, but we're being chaotic. We're being young, wild, and free like Sylvie would want us to be. So that is why my hair is like this. I'm sorry if me touching it all the time and moving it is distracting. I'm trying not to be, but it keeps getting in my eye. So maybe I didn't think this part of the video through. Number 21 is the only Minuteman on the list because, like I said, the powers across the board seem to transfer. So this is the only one that stood out to me. So Minuteman 7506829311199, who is the Minuteman who I believe tries to stop Sylvie tries to enchant him when she's in the TVA, and it doesn't work obviously, and then she starts to fight with him. I think he's a good stand-in for all of the Minutemen in the sense that, like, I think they all have the same power levels. I think the Minutemen are strong, obviously, but I wonder how strong they would be if they took their batons away. Like, I don't know how much the strength would transfer in terms of like physically hurling, but they do seem to be like kind of buff. Like, I think you still need to have some physical strength, so I think they would be able to do it. This Minuteman in particular, like, I think he had guts, you know, like standing up, like going, like, I guess you have to have guts. Like, I think part of the job is having guts, but he went right for, like, as soon as she tried to enchant him and it didn't work, he like went right onto the offensive. And I really like admired that he like did not hesitate and he really went for it. And so I think he would, again, just be really good at the throwing thing. Like, I think he would not hesitate. He would, you know, put his whole back into it, and I would go flying and it would be very fun. He's just not higher because I don't know how much strength they have without their batons. I don't know how much of their strength is like TVA induced. Like, I don't know if, like, I found him like on Earth without TVA like enhancements, would he still be able to throw me? I don't know. I don't know. There's just not enough information there. I hope we learn more about like the TVA and what they do to their agents and like hunters and Minutemen like in the next season. Very curious. Number 20 is the LAMENTIAN. Okay, so according to the wiki, she's the LAMENTIAN homesteader. So the lady who like blasts Loki and Sylvie when they're looking for help on Lamentis and they try to like bamboozle her. I don't know if she's physically strong enough, but her attitude was just so funny that I was like, okay, yeah. I think actually, yeah, I think she would be able to do it because she just seems like she's buff as hell. She's just sitting and waiting out the apocalypse. She seems like she put up with a lot of shit from her husband over the years. And so that leads me to believe that she has a really high, like, don't fuck with me threshold. And for some reason in my brain that translates to she's buff as hell. And so I think if I asked her to, she would throw me, or at least she would like blast me with her like blaster thing, which based on what it did to Loki and Sylvie, it doesn't actually hurt you, it just blasts you. So like, it wouldn't exactly be throwing, but it would be propelling me in some capacity through something. So while it wouldn't strictly meet the definitions of the criteria we're looking at in this video, I think she has a good standing in terms of propelling me through something at high force and high speed. So I'll give it to her. I just liked her attitude enough that she deserves to have that spot on the list. Number 19 is Alligator Loki. So again, this is like I have said this before in other videos, this is not a ranking of how much I like these characters. It's purely like capacity to throw me through a wall. And the thing with Alligator Loki is, as much as I think he's probably my favorite Loki variant that we encountered on the show, he is also an alligator, and they have little bitty limbs, I don't know, and they don't have like thumbs, and I just feel like there's a lot getting in the way of him being able to throw me. Presumably Alligator Loki can do magic, because it seems like all of the Lokis can do magic, although we didn't really see anyone other than, I think, main Loki, Sylvie, and classic Loki actually using magic, but like I'm assuming they all can do it. But we never strictly saw Alligator Loki doing magic, and so I don't want to assume that he can do magic, because I don't even know, like, does the timeline he comes from even have magic? Like, I don't know what the situation is on Alligator Loki's timeline, and so I don't want, like, based on what we saw, I don't know if he'd actually be able to hurl me. I think he'd be able to like chop off a limb just fine, like we saw him do that, and I think that's very impressive, but that doesn't really translate well to hurling. So as much as I love Alligator Loki, I just think in terms of like the Loki capacity to throw, he's the lowest of all of the Loki variants. But because he is a Loki variant and I want to believe he has magic, I'm putting him as high as he is currently, just with the hopes that with his magic he would be able to like pick me up and throw me, you know? That's the logic there. Number 18 is Throg, for similar reasons. I'm glad we got Throg because it allows me to talk about Thor a little bit in this, and I have said this before. I've said this for like 10 years. Like when I watched Thor 2011, I've said this. I've been saying it since then. I feel very strange consuming content about Loki without Thor, and I feel strange consuming content about Thor without Loki, which is why I'm a little bit apprehensive for Thor Love and Thunder, I'll be honest with you. And while I wished, like like Thor's absence on the show was like personally to me very felt, because I really like the most interesting thing about both of those characters is the way they play off each other to me. I did like that we got a couple mentions of Thor, and I like that we saw Throg, who to my understanding is like people love him in the comics. I don't read the comics really, so I don't really have any like attachment in that way, but I mean, I saw him and I thought that was kind of fun. He doesn't seem very strong though, in the sense that like he could not get himself out of the jar, and I feel like if he was very strong, he'd be able to just pop the lid off and like pop out. So I don't think Throg is, like, I think maybe for a frog he's like abnormally strong, like in the way that like Thor is abnormally strong compared to a human. I think Throg is probably abnormally strong compared to like an average frog, but I don't think compared to like a fully grown human, if he can't get out of the little jar, I don't think he would be able to throw me very far. And so I'm not comfortable putting him any higher, although if we had any variation of like a human-sized Thor on this list, he would immediately go to number 1 because he's Thor. But like, because we didn't, that's where I'm putting Throg. The reason he's not lower is I know Throg has a version of Mjolnir, so I think maybe if he like used the hammer to like hit me, and then that somehow like through the power of God and thunder or whatever like propelled me through a wall, that would sort of count. So that's where he is, but it's too iffy. There are too many unknown variables. Like, we need to do more research into this like experiment to see if it would work, and so I can't in good faith put Throg any higher. I do wish he'd been able to get to that like giant Mjolnir that was like right next to him in the jar though. That seemed like needlessly cruel, like leaving that like close enough for him to see but not like close enough for him to reach. It just seemed like very unfair. Number 17 is Hipster Loki. Again, he's more low because the rest of the Lokis are higher. He's a fully sized Loki, so like my assumption is he's strong and he's powerful and he can throw me pretty far through a wall. But of the Loki variants they showed us, he was the least interesting to me. His outfit made me angry. I would not want to meet him. I think the concept just upset me deeply, and so that's why he's where he is. But I do think, considering Loki is like a regular human-sized Loki is like 500 pounds, but slim, so like presumably that's like pure muscle. I think no matter what, a human-sized Loki would be able to go the distance in terms of like hurling me. It's just like this is the least preferable option out of all of them for me, so and that's why he's where he is. Number 16 is CYCLIST Loki. Again, same sort of premise as hipster Loki. The only thing with Cyclist Loki is like the concept of Loki like rigging the Tour de France and like winning that just made me laugh a lot. I don't know if he would want to throw me. The thing with the Tour de France Lokis, I don't understand, like, is it our Loki who just like decided to like fuck with the Tour de France and that's what got him arrested by the TVA? Does he just really like cycling? Like, is he actually passionate about cycling? Like, was his like alternate life path to become like a cyclist? Because if that's the scenario, I think A, that would be really funny, and B, I think I could persuade him that throwing me would be some sort of like strength exercise for him like while he's training for the Tour de France. So I think if that was the scenario, like if he like genuinely was interested in biking and I like framed the situation for him the correct way and I was like, look, picture me as like a living, breathing sandbag that you can like throw to like strengthen up your arms and your legs or whatever so that you can win the next Tour de France. I think that would be enough to persuade him to really put his everything into that throw. And for that reason, he has to be higher. Number 15 is Hunter C20. So Hunter C20, well, she's a hunter and presumably I think all the TVA hunters are supposed to be strong as hell. And she just seems like the reason she's where she is she's a hunter, so she has to be high up because I think she's strong, but there were other hunters that were stronger, I think. She just seemed really sweet. Like I think she would be able to throw me really far, but I don't think I'd want to do that. Like I think I'd rather like sit down with her in that like little like, was it like a little restaurant or like a pub or like some sort of like night outing she was doing in her memory that Sylvia like invaded. I would like to also do that with her. Like I think we could be like besties, like sitting by the beach, sipping like mocktails or cocktails in her case, just like chatting about life and like painting each other's nails and like gossiping and like, I don't know, just having a ball, having a laugh. And so like I would feel like if I encountered her, I'd rather do that as opposed to asking her to like fling me around. I just don't know if like if she was not brainwashed by the TVA, I don't know if that's what she wanted to be doing with her time. And so I would feel bad imposing that upon her, knowing that she already had so much of her life stolen from her. I just think giving her life back, I wouldn't want to immediately jump into like, I know you've been brainwashed and like had your whole life stolen away from you, but do you want to do me a favor and like throw me through a wall, throw me through some drywall, just like see how far you can do. Like I don't know, it just seems like in poor taste. So I would just like allow her to do her thing and I would leave her alone. But I think we could be really good friends. So that's why she's like high as she is, but not higher. Number 14 is Hunter B15. So Hunter B15, like I said, with Hunter C20, she is very strong. She looks incredibly strong too, like compared to like, she definitely looks a lot more jacked than Hunter C20. And so that leads me to believe that maybe whatever she was doing in her regular life, she was also like working out and like exercising and really making sure that she put her everything into being strong and being jacked. And so I think knowing that about her, I think she'd be a little, like, even if I gave her life back, she would be a little more inclined to help me because I think she still like works out and maybe like weightlifts or something. And so it would be like, again, like I'd just frame it to her the way I would frame it to Cyclist Loki as like a training exercise. And I think she'd be down for it. She also just seems really badass and like, she was kind of like a little bit strict with like Loki and all the variants when the show first started, but you can really see her mellow out, especially when she learns like the truth about things. She seems like she'd be a really solid ally to also have on your side. So I think we would get along and she would also be down to do it. And I think we would also bond through that experience. And then together we could like set the TVA on fire or something. It would just be fun. So for that reason, that's where she's 14. She's a badass, love her. I wish we knew her name. I would love to know, like learn her name in the next season. Number 13 is Viking Loki. Like the other Loki variants, I think he is probably strong as hell, can probably do magic, can probably like hurl me. The thing with a lot of these Loki variants is we didn't actually encounter them. So I'm just going off of their appearance and then what I know about like current Loki, right? So I think with Viking Loki, I think he has all the attributes current Loki does, but he also just looks like he like leans more into like the Thor-esque aspect of being alive. Like I think he just seems like he cares more about like physical strength and like brute force more so than main Loki does. And for that reason, I just think he would like be really, really good at throwing me. So that's why he's like above the other Lokis, but not quite as high as some of the other Lokis on the list. Mostly because I just don't know enough about him. That's the problem with a lot of these variants is like I think they're really cool and I'd love to know more, but I just don't have enough information to put them higher. Like they can't get in the top 10. Number 12 is Brute Loki. Exact same logic as the previous Loki. The only difference is I'm assuming Brute Loki is even more brute force oriented than Viking Loki, and so justifiably I think he would throw me harder, further, through the wall, across the football field, across town. It would cause like a national like catastrophe probably, just the strength of it. And so that's why he's one higher up. I just cannot justify putting him down lower because he's literally called Brute Loki, right? The only reason he's not higher is I just don't have enough information. I'm using a lot of assumptions to come to these conclusions, you know? Number 11 is RAVONNA RENSLAYER. So the thing with RAVONNA RENSLAYER is she is a girl boss in every sense of the word. She like seems like she had quite a career as a hunter running around doing TVA stuff, and then she became a judge. So she seems like a good balance of like brains and brawn. Like she has the brute force strength and she also has like, you know, the scholarly like sharp wittiness, which almost like, now that I'm saying it out loud, I almost think it would have been cool if like, I know this isn't how it works in the comics, and I know like it wouldn't have been like, it's not clearly where the show was going, but it would have been kind of fun if RAVONNA was a Loki variant, because like who else do we know that's like a good mix of bronze and brains? Like Loki, right? Like Loki's strong as fuck canonically, but he's so like cunning, and he uses his brain and his words and his wit way more often than he uses like brute strength, and so that would have been an interesting plot twist. But anyway, that's not the point of this. The point is RAVONNA is 11 because I think she's really strong, and so she'd be able to do it. I also think she'd also take some sort of like glee in doing it, because near the end there, she was kind of like, I don't think she was like happy to be doing it, but she wasn't pulling the shit she was pulling to suffer. Like the only time she like legitimately looked upset was when she had to like prune MOBIUS, but otherwise like she looked a little too like gleeful at like making Sylvie suffer in the elevator thing. And so I think she's like a bit of like a dark side to her. Well, it's obviously a bit more than a dark side. She like was framed as the villain at the end there, but like I think she would enjoy flinging me more than the average person would, and I think she would be good at it because she seems to be like the whole package, like brains, beauty, brawn, like all of it. And so yeah, girl boss behavior. She very narrowly missed out on the top 10. Like I almost inched her in there, but I am biased and this is my ranking, and I just love Loki enough that I had to shove like 20 variants of him into the top 10, which doesn't make sense mathematically, but I say things and then I have to justify them. So number 10 is Sif. So okay, the thing with Sif is like we don't actually get like Sif, like real Sif, like it's just like Loki's memory of Sif, like on loop, right? But she was technically in the show, and so I wanted to counter. Now you could argue that we had like a flashback of all of the Avengers and also like main timeline Thor and Odin and Frigga in the first episode, but I'm not counting those because they're all scenes from other movies, whereas the Sif scene was like brand new for the show. So I'm counting that and not the others. I just think if I was to lump in all of the Avengers, this video would be so much longer and I would just gush about like Steve and Thor for like way too long, and it just seemed like unnecessary. So we're just gonna stick to Sif. Sif is number 10 because she's like the baddest bitch on the block. I love Sif. I think she's been criminally underused, though I am happy she wasn't in Ragnarok, because I'm pretty sure if Jamie Alexander had the availability to be in that movie, her character would be dead the way the Warriors 3 were dead. So I'm glad she made it out alive. I think she's just a bad bitch. Like, this is unrelated to anything, but no shade to Natalie Portman. I know this isn't how it goes in the comics, but I almost would prefer in the movie verse if instead of Jane becoming Thor, like they're planning on doing, and this doesn't matter or have like an effect on anything because obviously the movie's like basically like almost done, so like nothing's gonna change, but I would almost prefer if they made Sif Thor or even like Valkyrie, but like specifically Sif I think would be a great way to bring back a character who was like loved and had a lot of chemistry with the main cast but was also criminally underused. My dog is really upset. Whereas like, no shade to Natalie Portman, I think she's a really great actress. I just don't think like she worked in the Thor movies. And I don't know, maybe now with whatever the new scripts are that will change, but I just like did not like her performances in the first two. I just didn't think she had chemistry with Chris Hemsworth. I don't think she's like, I just didn't feel like she was really, like it just kind of seems she was phoning it in, to be honest with you. So unrelated to anything, I just think Sif is a badass who should be Thor, and consequently, I think Sif is a badass who would definitely be able to throw me through a wall. She would be more than happy to do it. She would need little to no convincing. I think she would just find it fun. Again, she would be like very down as like a bonding exercise too, I think. Like, you know, like a team bonding exercise, like that I think would appeal to her. I think she'd just be down and very excited to have like an ally on her side who isn't all like, ooh, Sif, you're a woman and you also fight? How extraordinary. I just think it'd be fun. She's just a bad bitch who doesn't take shit, and yeah, I think it would just be fun. It would just be really fun. It would be like, I want to become her best friend, and I think a great way to get close to her heart and want her to be my friend is to allow her to throw me around like a sack of potatoes. I think that is the way to people's hearts in terms of like forming friendships. I guarantee if you go up to someone and you say you have permission to throw me like a sack of potatoes, they will do one of two things. They will immediately befriend you, or they will run in the other direction. But either way, you will know where you stand with them, right? Like you will know if they are down to clown or if they are perhaps a normie who doesn't take kindly to strangers asking to be thrown around like a sack of potatoes. And like, if they don't take kindly to that, would you want to be their friend anyway? Probably not. That's just my humble opinion. Let's just move on. It's really late, and as you can tell, I think I'm starting to crack a little bit. Number 9 is Alioth? Like, you know, the cloud dog thing, the guardian of the end of time that like Sylvie and Loki like enchant, and he like parts and like allows them to go to the castle. To my understanding, based on what the show told me, he's strong as fuck. He's huge. He is like all powerful, like just consuming and massacring basically anything that lands in his path. My one thing is I don't like, he has a lot of like sucking ability, but I don't know if he has like would he be able to actually like throw me, right? Or would it be more like a really strong like gust of wind, which I don't know if that qualifies as throwing. It's more blowing. I don't know what the mechanics of it would be, but I do think it's like feasible enough that I would have to give it to him. And he's so strong, like he's so like overpowered compared to like everything around him that I couldn't not put him in the top 10. He's so strong. And I just like, there's something about like the concept of like a cloud guard dog that is kind of fun, kind of cute. I would like that. And I think perhaps if I could get him on my side to throw me instead of consuming me, maybe that would put us on a path to friendship, and then we could become besties, and then he would allow me to adopt him, and then I would become the proud owner of a dog that is consumed entirely of like absorbed matter at the end of time. And I think that would be kind of fun for me, you know? Is that a little power hungry? Perhaps. Is there anything wrong with ambition? No. I think people who think that's weird just hate to see a strong woman win. And I think if that is what you think, you should check your biases, because you hate to see girl bosses win. And that's probably why you don't like this scenario, and you also probably think I put Sif too high. So number 8 is He Who Remains. He Who Remains was an interesting character. He was a cool character. He was very well done. He was very well executed. Jonathan Majors like ate that role up. But yeah, so like the thing with him is he's very like jovial, very like chilled out, and like kind of like kooky but mellow simultaneously. But you know he's strong as hell, right? Like that was the whole thing, is like there's like an undercurrent of danger because you know what he can do. Like not only to you, but to the timeline. He knows everything, like up until the moment where they crossed the threshold. He knew everything that was gonna happen. So I guess he would know more than I would if he would throw me. But I would like to believe if I went to him and I was like, hey, can you throw me? He'd be like, I've been expecting you. Of course I can throw you. And he just seems strong as fuck. Like, you know, like again, like he's got the bronze and the brains. He said various versions of him have been conquerors. And I think that, I guess, implies some sort of like strength. I don't think it's an admirable thing, but that version of him, not Kang, but like He Who Remains isn't a conqueror the way he explained it. He just seemed to be like a scientist and a dude who was trying to hold together the end of time. And like, do I think it was like a sketchy authoritarian thing to do? Yes. But does that mean I don't want like presumably the most powerful being in the universe to throw me through a wall? No, I just think you would be foolish to have the opportunity to ask the most powerful being known to the universe to throw. You'd be foolish not to ask him, right? Like that seems like a wasted opportunity. I just think it'd be fun, and because he would know I'm coming, he'd be able to prep for it, and like wouldn't that be like a fun thing to do? My only reason that like he's not higher is because like this version of him he seemed like he said he was tired, and I don't know if he would like put all his enthusiasm into it. Like maybe he would because he would know I'm coming, but also perhaps he's just old and tired and just like wouldn't want to do it. And also like, what if he said no? Like what if you come all this way, you're super excited, and he's like, my papers say no, so I'm not gonna do it. And then you have to stab him and start the multiverse because he won't even do the one thing you've asked him to do. So like, you know, there's a lot of pros and a lot of cons there. Number 7 is President Loki. If this was like a ranking just on like pure like attractiveness of characters, President Loki would be number 1. President Loki was like, I wish we got more than like 2 minutes of him, because I like looked at him and I was like, I love you. You're awful. Like, you're just so like gratuitously unlikable. And I'm like obsessed with you. So I'm disappointed that he didn't stick around more, but he was so funny. Also, my problem with all these Lokis is that they have all the powers of all the Lokis. So I know he's strong, I know he's witty, I know he can do magic. We love a man who can work a suit. We love a Loki who like commits to the horns. I hate that they keep making the Lokis ditch their horns. I like the Loki horns. I don't care if you think it looks goofy. I like the Loki horns. Give Loki an outfit back, and then give him his horns back, please. I cannot believe we had to spend 6 entire episodes, with the exception of the very beginning of the first one, watching Loki walk around in business attire. No. So anyways, President Loki, breath of fresh air, love a well-tailored suit. Yeah, he is all powerful, and I love that he had like, at least for the brief amount of time his power lasted, he had the charisma to like get all these Lokis to rally behind him, obviously for their own purposes, to stab him in the back, because that's like Loki's got a Loki. But like, I was very compelled by the few minutes I saw him, and that is just why he's so high up on this list. I was just like, you are my favorite, and not in the show enough, but you are my favorite. And he seems a little mean. He seems a lot mean, and so I think his throw would be one of the most impressive, because I don't think he would care about hurting me, which would be really bad for me. And like in a normal scenario that would bump you lower on my list, but because he gets the Loki exception, his lack of care about my physical or mental well-being kind of works in his favor here. So that's why he's number 7. He could throw me through a wall any day of the week. Yeah, I'm so down. So down. Number 6 is Boastful Loki. We're finally getting to the Loki variants that we actually like got to encounter on the show, and were more than just like holograms that popped up briefly on the screen. Like these Lokis are actually like characters in their own right. Boastful Loki looks jacked as hell. Like of all the Lokis we met that were like Loki characters and not like holograms, he seemed like the most like physically jacked. And I don't know if that's because he was like trying really hard to keep up with Thor. Like he did have his like the hammer that he kind of like assembled and put together himself. So I don't know if he just like really tried to imitate Thor more so than the others, which would lead me to believe he again values physical strength more so than the other Lokis. Yeah, he seems really strong. I think again he would throw me very, very far. The one thing not working in his favor is like he betrayed everybody, and that like hurt my feelings. I liked the little found family of Lokis we had going on, so like the fact that one of them betrayed the others like upset me. I think if they had all of the Lokis in the little Loki group that we met up with betray each other, that would have been fine, and I would have been like, okay, then it's free, like it's just Loki's being Loki. But like the other Lokis had like a little alliance going, like Kid Loki and Classic Loki and like Loki Prime or whatever you want to call him. They were all like hanging, and Alligator Loki, they were all like getting along, and he has to like betray everybody, and that like again is completely in character, but it like upset me, so I couldn't put him higher. But he looks jacked as fuck. I strongly believe it would be a good throw, and so I would allow him to do it, but I just can't put him higher because I think he should have stuck with the group. I think they could have done something really powerful together if they'd like allowed the alliance to like continue forming and to like grow and flourish into something. And you know, like sometimes a family can be you and then 5 alternate versions of yourself, unless one of those alternate versions like betrays the rest of you. Then it's like really upsetting, and that can't be your family anymore, you know? Hurtful. Number 5 is Frost Giant Loki. So Frost Giant Loki is again another Loki that we didn't meet at all. He was on a hologram. My one thing with Frost Giant Loki is I miss seeing Loki like in his Frost Giant form. Like we got it for like 2 minutes in the first Thor movie and then like never again, which I find very upsetting, and I wish Marvel would like lean into that, which is what I was hoping they would do with the show. Like I was really hoping they would lean into Loki's identity issues around being a Frost Giant, etc, etc, but they didn't. But they also acknowledged that Loki is a Frost Giant, so it's not like they're retconning it or they forgot it happened. So again, it drives me crazy, but they did give you this version of Loki that he's embraced himself clearly. He like was walking around in his Frost Giant form, maybe was never even ashamed of it at all in the first place, and I think he was never ashamed of it at all. He probably is like mentally a little bit stronger than like the main Loki, just because like he didn't have to grapple with the trauma of finding out, you know, he's not who he thought he was, and that like he's what his people have called a monster his whole life. Like he wouldn't have had to deal with all that, and so I think he would just like mentally be a little bit stronger than our Loki, and thus physically I think be stronger. Also just like Frost Giants, I don't know if this implies he was raised in Frost Giant culture or that he just like embraces it more, but I think Frost Giants by virtue of being giants are probably stronger than like Asgardians, or like just physically, not in terms of like, I know Asgard is stronger than Jotunheim just like as like a realm, but like Frost Giants I think are stronger than like Asgardians, because I don't know, they're giants, right? Like I feel like the word giant must imply something. Even if it's just like physically he's taller than the other Lokis, I think that gives him like a little more brute force, and so I just think he would be a great candidate to hurl me. Also, he would be really cold, which I enjoy because I'm always like overheating, and so I think in the brief amount of time he like picked me up and cradled me in like his arms or like over his shoulder before he like flings me, like it would be like hugging like a popsicle, and that would be like very refreshing, especially considering we're going through like a heat wave right now. So I feel like I would just like really enjoy the experience, and that is why. And I would just also just really like love to just like talk to him about being a Frost Giant and his like experience and like what it's like, and maybe like tell him to talk to like Loki Prime about it, and like because like Loki Prime obviously is struggling with that still, I think. So I would love to meet Frost Giant Loki. I would just like a crumb of like time with Frost Giant Loki, no matter how it was spent, would be valuable, and that is why he's so high on the list. Just like 5 minutes of the time while he like picks me up and throws me would be all I need. I would be a happy woman. So, and also yeah, I think he's strong as hell. I think he'd throw me really, really far. Maybe he could throw me like into a snowbank. If we did this on Jotunheim, it would be so fun because he would like pick me up like a snowball and just like fling me into like a snowbank, and it would be so refreshing, so fun, wholesome winter fun for the whole family. Number 4 is Classic Loki. So Classic Loki is like, Richard E. Grant killed it. He was so fun. I love that they like leaned into how ridiculous the comic costume is. That was delightful. Classic Loki did the thing I said where I was like, the thing about Loki and Thor is that their relationship and their characters are so entwined with each other that it feels wrong to not have their stories be about each other in some way. And so I liked that that so much of Classic Loki's like arc, not even arc, but just like from the little snippets we got about him, his love for his brother shone through, like what kept him going and what made him like deviate the timeline or whatever was just like the fact that he missed his brother and he wanted to see his brother again. I thought that was really wholesome, and that just like really attached me to his character, and so that's like why he's so high up on the list in terms of me liking him. And then also, of all the Lokis we saw, I think he displayed the most like impressive performance of like pure like strength. Like he basically raised an illusion of like Asgard perfect from memory, which again, like from a character standpoint, maybe go, oh, he misses his home. He remembers his home every down to like every last like inch of detail. but just like the impressive display that he put on, like raising that whole thing, that whole illusion must have been so like taxing to like hold up, and he did it only to provide like Loki and Sylvie with a distraction, and he sacrificed himself in the process. And so like he's kind of dead, so he wouldn't be able to do it. But if he was not dead, or if he faked his own death again, which like he explained how he did it in Infinity War, so I feel like it's not unplausible that he could have done it again. So knowing all of that, if he is still around, I think even if he like physically is perhaps like a little bit older and not as strong as like the more younger like youthful Lokis, I think his magic strength would just be so powerful. Like he could throw me really hard and really far, and it would be really fun. And also I just want to give him a hug. And so if like wrapping my arms around him before he like violently flings me through a wall is the closest I can get to hugging him and telling him it's okay and he'll see his brother again, I'll take it, you know? I would just like hold him. I'd be like, the sun will shine on you guys again. You said it yourself. And then he would be like really disgusted with me, and he would like crumple me up into his hands like a sheet of paper, and then like just like fling me at a garbage can, but like one that was like 5 blocks away. He would like dunk me into it, and it would be fun. Maybe not for my bones, but I'd probably be weird, so it'd be justified on his part. We are almost done. We're at the top 3. So number 3 is Kid Loki. Obviously, Kid Loki is a delight. I'm so excited. It seems like he's sticking around. He seems like the only Loki variant that like didn't die or like, I don't know, disappear or something. So like I think they're probably gonna find a way now that the timeline or multiverse or whatever is open to like bring him into the main timeline, because it looks like they're gonna try to do Young Avengers, which is fun. I just like, again, Kid Loki, it seems like paradoxical to put him this high because he is Kid Loki, and so he's so much smaller than the other Lokis we encountered. But I feel like he has a lot of strength in him, because like his whole thing that deviated timeline was that he killed Thor. And like, I don't know if that was an accident. I want to believe it was an accident, because like I said, I think Thor and Loki, no matter the timeline, no matter the place, like love each other, but they also constantly hurt each other, and that's kind of like the push and pull of their relationship. And so like on purpose or not, I think he regrets what happened to Thor. But you also know if he was able to actually kill Thor, he must be strong as fuck. So I don't know how he would do it, if it was through magic or just like sheer force, but I think he would be really good at throwing me. And I also think because he's a child, and like kids, like I feel like kids are just more physically active. They're more likely to play like games that involve balls, you know, like they go play catch with their friends and stuff, you know? I think they do. Do kids play catch anymore? Or like has the internet rotted their brains enough that they don't go outside and do that anymore? I don't know. I don't know if Asgard had like softball, or just like go outside and play with your friends and like toss a ball around. Maybe if he played fetch with Alligator Loki, he'd be used to throwing a ball around. Anyways, I don't know how much throwing experience he has, but I think considering how much, in so little time, how strong they portrayed him as, I think he'll be a prime candidate to like hurl me violently through a wall. And I would thank him, and I would be like, you are so cool. He was the king of the whole thing, and he was the littlest Loki. I just think he's so interesting. I would like love to know more about him. Like I'm really intrigued and would love, like I just want to learn more, so much more about Kid Loki, because I find him fascinating, just conceptually, very cool. And just like, yeah, I just really want to know what happened with him and Thor. Like, anyway, off topic, but yeah, could throw me. I'm sweating so much, but we're almost done. I promise we are almost done. Number 2 is Sylvie. Obviously, Sylvie was so cool. Like literally my only qualm with Sylvie is I almost felt like she was taking over the show, and for a show called Loki, and for someone who insists she's not a Loki, I feel like the show was more about her than it was about like Loki. Like Loki kind of started to feel like a side character in his own show, which I found frustrating because I was there for Loki. But just in terms of like her as a character, she was so cool. I love characters that are like just a little bit unhinged, just like very like raw, feral, angry, pissed the fuck off. And she kind of like embodied everything I loved about like, actually no, she wasn't quite, but I think I understand why they didn't make her quite as like emotional as Loki was at the end of the first Thor movie, because I think that on a man versus on a woman reads very differently. And I think if they'd made like, if they'd made Sylvie more like, I don't want to say like hysterical. I think if you watch Loki at the end of the first Thor movie, like hysterical is not inaccurate to describe him. Like he's clearly not well, he's clearly going through something, and I think that again reads very differently on women versus men. So I think if they had put her in that same headspace exactly, I think it would have almost like diminished her character, because because society sucks, would have taken her less seriously because of it. Whereas I feel like with Loki, it was almost like, it was like very clearly a sign of his like deteriorating mental state. So I think there are a lot of like interesting parallels between like Sylvie in this and Loki in the first Thor movie. There's like subtle differences. And so what I liked about Sylvie was all the stuff I liked about I liked about Loki in the first Thor movie. But I almost do think she was almost like a little too, like she had this like raw rage and vulnerability, but she was also almost like too put together. Like I would have liked, like, I know I was gonna say I would have liked for her to fuck up more, and I know her killing He Who Remains was kind of like the biggest fuck up a person could do, presumably, but like up until that point, she kind of was, she didn't really have too many flaws. Like, I guess guess she had all the flaws like a typical Loki does, but it was very much like she kind of was very idealistically put together, which like I'm fine with. Like male characters are written like that all the time. But off topic, anyways, my point is Sylvie is so high because she's like so strong and so smart, and I think even though she's like in like a physically maybe like slimmer, smaller form, I think she like obviously can pack quite a punch. She can like, if she was like enchanting someone, like the way she enchanted like all the rocks cart people and then was throwing me via them, she could obviously like enchant someone and like have like someone who's much stronger throw me, or she could just use her own magic. But I even think in her like physical form, like she could throw me. Like she went toe to toe just in her own body against like Loki, against like TVA people. She like single-handedly took down a whole bunch of them. Like as far as we know, like even before the show starts, she's like killed a whole bunch. So I think she's just really, really physically strong. I think as a symbol of like girlhood bonding, she would be super down to do it. I think it would allow her to vent some of her rage if I was just like literally like treat me like you would treat like a punching bag. Throw me through a surface, don't worry about it. Summon me back, maybe like slap a healing spell on me and just do it again, baby. It'll be a fun little rodeo for both of us. I think it would be fun. I think we'd become best friends by the end of it, and I do want to be her best friend quite seriously. I also want to ask her where she got her crown from, because she had the whole like one of her horns was like kind of like chopped off thing, which I thought was very cool. I think it was clearly meant to be a sign of like she's been running around for her life. I also want to know where she got hers from, because like Loki obviously got his because he was royalty, right? And like with Sylvie, it's like I couldn't tell, because they were like, she like made fun of Loki for being a prince a bunch, but they didn't really explain if she also was a princess, where she came from. But if she wasn't a princess, because she made it sound like she wasn't. Not that she was like taken away from royalty and like thus was not raised royal, but this made it sound like she wasn't royalty at all, but then she still was like in Asgard. So I want to know where she got her crown from, because if she was like I don't know, it wasn't with her when she was stolen. Did she make one for herself? I just have a lot of questions for her that I'd love for her to answer, and I just think she'd be strong as fuck, and I just think she's really, really cool. I want her to dye her hair black, even though I know her whole thing is she's not Loki. I know they seem to be combining Loki with like the comic character of the Enchantress, like the second one, to make her Sylvie. So like I get what they're kind of doing, but I still want her to go full like dark hair bad bitch, because I think the one thing that kind of disappointed me about her being blonde was I would have loved to be her for like Halloween or something, but she has blonde hair, and like Lady Loki has black hair, and I know she's not meant to be Lady Loki, she's Sylvie, but like please spare a character who's like kind of dark and kind of badass and kind of sexy with like dark hair, so I can be that for Halloween, you know? That's all. This is so off the rails. None of this has any bearing on why she's number 2. But she's definitely number 2 because she's everything I like about Loki, but she's not Loki, so I can't put her above Loki. So she's number 2. And that's kind of a spoiler alert for my number 1. Obviously number 1 is Loki Prime, or as Primus sees in the show. I feel weird calling him Loki Prime, because like I feel like Loki Prime is the Loki that died in Infinity War. But Loki Prime in this show, which is 2012 Loki having stolen the Tesseract and like, you know, done his whole shenanigans. So the reason he's number 1 obviously is everything I just said about why I love Loki, why I think Loki is strong as fuck, why I think he's physically capable of doing it. But the reason he like is like superior to all of the other Lokis, and yes, call back to the show, I think main Loki is the superior Loki. As much as they tried to nerf him, I think he is. Because like that's 2012 Loki, and from everything we've seen 2012 Loki do, like just taking into account like Thor, the first Thor, and like the Avengers movie, he's strong, he has really cool magical abilities, he can do like cool shit like illusions, and he can fight, and he just has a lot of cool powers. I am just really drawn to Loki as a character who has a lot of like understandable reasons to be like incredibly angry and incredibly traumatized, and like basically lashes out in not good ways. Like I think the thing with Loki that makes him interesting to me is he's not a perfect victim. Like he does things that obviously he's responsible for. Like I'm not saying this to like abdicate him of responsibility, but you understand why he's so incredibly damaged. That's why I think Loki is so interesting. And so I would love to encounter him in real life and just be able to like talk to him, you know? Like I think what attracts a lot of people to Loki is just like he is so relatable as a character, in the sense that I think a lot of people, and you obviously can't because like you're a person living in the real world and not like a fictional character who's capable of committing like war crimes, but I think a lot of people in the real world would like to take like hurt and pain and anger and like the ways they've been wronged by other people, and like would love to like in a hypothetical scenario like lash out. And they obviously don't, because again in the real world that's not how you deal with your problems. You can't like lash out at the people who hurt you, you can't like punish them, make them pay for their crimes, but it's like kind of comforting in your head to be like, I wish they would pay for what they did to me. And I think Loki's arc up into 2012. Like I think Thor, like the end of Thor, up in like all the way through Avengers, I think, and even Thor: The Dark World, which obviously this Loki has not gone through yet or ever will go through, is somebody who is in incredible pain, lashing out very aggressively against the people who hurt him, but also just the world in general for what he perceives it is also responsible for. And I just think there's just like so much to dig into with that. I just think I just love Loki. I love Loki so much. And so I think I couldn't not put him number one just because of how much his character means to me. And like, to be fair to this character, because he's 2012 Loki, he has all of the Thor movie characterization behind him and all of the Avengers characterization behind him, which is something like the other characters on this list don't have. Like they don't have 2 prior movies worth of characterization for me to like elevate them. And so like I feel like maybe if I did this ranking again in season 2, it would maybe change. Like maybe Prime Loki wouldn't be so high because I would get to know the other characters better, but just because I know Loki and like, I feel like Marvel is kind of trying to distance like current Loki and Thor from like original Loki and Thor, but you can't actually do that. Like fundamentally, if you're going to tell me this is 2012 Avengers era Loki, I'm going to factor in those 2 movies worth of like character development into how I perceive him. And knowing all of that, I could not put him at 1. I just think he's such an interesting character. I think he's so like, just going to the premise of the video, he's just so fucking strong. Like you literally, okay, it's not exactly the same thing, but in the Avengers movie, he literally throws Tony through a window. So like I already know he could do it. You see him do it on screen, basically the same basic premise. And yeah, like a window is different than like a wall. Windows are more fragile, they're glass versus like drywall or whatever. But I think he was definitely pulling his punches. I think if Loki wanted to throw Tony through a wall as opposed to a window, he could have done that just as easily. I think he just went for the window because the window, like Tony's in a penthouse and his wall was a window. But if it was a stronger, more durable wall as opposed to a window, I think he still would have done it, no problem. And so like, I know canonically he can do it. I have seen him do it. I think it would be very enjoyable. If I died by Loki's hand, I would die happy. And like literally, if the god of mischief kills me, it's not his fault, and I don't want him to be punished for it actually. So don't you dare try to do it. And this is getting really unhinged and very long, and I have to edit. So without further ado, I'm going to wrap up this video. If you want me to rank any characters that I might have missed, like extras that you were particularly fond of, or like one-off characters that you're particularly fond of, leave them in the comments and I will rank them. Who would you pick from this list to throw you through a window or a wall or any sort of like hard surface of your choosing? If you want to follow me on other social media platforms because you thought I was unhinged in this video and you would like to keep up with my other unhinged ramblings on other platforms, you can follow me on Twitter and on Instagram. If you could hit the thumbs up button, I would really appreciate that if you liked the video. And of course, if you want to hang out with me next week, I post new videos every Wednesday, so you can hit that subscribe button, and I will see you guys all then. Bye!